915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. You can visit desertvoice.media to learn more.
915 TALK.
The world is looking at El Paso.
What will we say to the world? From the KELP studio in El Paso, this is 915 Talk.
And now your host.
Good afternoon, beautiful citizens of the borderland. This is 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we are broadcasting from the heart of the world's largest borderplex. We're here at the KELP studio in El Paso, and we have Mac Daddy Del Norte on the board. Mac Daddy, how you doing this afternoon?
Hey, Andy, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
You know, I'm doing pretty good.
That's good.
I'm doing pretty good.
Good to hear that.
You know, would you say that we have the best jobs in the world?
Honestly, yes.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Our guest is already pointing at himself. He thinks he has the best job in the world.
Really?
You know, you probably don't remember the show Dirty Jobs.
Yeah, actually, yes.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
But it's just...
that was very interesting.
But there are certain jobs I can't imagine myself doing. And our guest is doing one of those jobs that I can't imagine doing myself. Yeah, for sure, for sure. A true American hero.
Wow.
Even though he's originally from Canada, he's truly an American.
No?
Oh, no, his parents are from Canada. There he is. All right.
Cool.
He's a true American hero. He's from El Paso. Yes,
go.
he's been here his whole life.
Nice.
But you know what I've been thinking about lately, Mac Daddy?
What have you been thinking about?
I've been thinking about raising boys.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have 3 boys. You have 2 boys.
Yes, I have
You're catching up. You're catching up. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your boys are younger.
Yes, very.
Mine are now getting to the end of being teenagers. They're young adults. What are some of the concerns you have with your boys getting older?
Oh man, you know what? It's funny. One of my concerns is them getting bullied.
Oh, interesting.
That's a big concern. So I'm like teaching them now how not to get bullied.
Wow, they're pretty young.
They're very young, but I'm already teaching them.
You're teaching them how to fight back?
Yes. No, not how to fight back, but how to defend
This is Christian
themselves.
radio. Come on, Matt. Yeah, but it is an interesting question. This that you're kind of really bringing up is what is a true godly man?
True.
And how do you teach a young man how to become that man?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Cool. And we have a good friend of this radio ministry in the studio. Nice. He's the student ministries pastor over at First Baptist.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a hard job.
Yeah, it's better him than me. Hats off. Hats off. You know? So we're going to jump into this conversation talking about, really raising godly men.
Nice.
So let's jump right into it. So without further ado, let's give a very warm Borderland welcome to the one, the only, Pastor Jeremy Kroeker. Jeremy, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Andy. Great to be back. And I love your intros, man. And I want to know how many nicknames you've given your buddy over here on the board.
Well, we used to call him Adrian, the new guy. But then he wasn't the new guy anymore. So he became Mac Daddy Del Norte, possibly due to his love of a particular sandwich offered at one of America's most prominent fast food
Oh, really? He likes that one, huh?
Yeah, and it's from an early age. That's what he was called.
Speaking of dirty jobs, that was my first job.
Flipping some burgers, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I was a drive-through guy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And then I love your use of nicknames because one of my things on the speaker in the drive-through was always to come up with a different name for myself.
Oh, wow.
So I'd be like, welcome to
funny.
Batman, may I help you? And whatever. I'm Luke Skywalker. How can I take your order?
That's funny.
And just seeing if people would actually listen or catch it. It was really, really entertaining for a young man.
Yeah. Well, I worked the drive-through a little bit. My joke was when they were done ordering, I would say, "Is that for here to go?" And just this really long, awkward pause, like, to go. Like, okay,
good.
you can blow around to the window.
I like that one. Adding it to my notes.
Right. So it is interesting, this whole big conversation about really what is a man? Mm-hmm. What is manhood? And what does that look like in the context of Scripture?
Yeah.
And I know you're working with teenagers, young adults, college age. What are some of the questions they're asking?
Well, so one of the things that I've seen over the years being in youth ministry and college ministry for a couple of decades is that question hasn't really changed very much. It's like people are wondering, like, what is manhood? And you get stereotypes from culture, right? What are some stereotypes of being a manly man that you'd think of off the top of your head?
Driving a dump truck, carrying a gun. Rides a motorcycle and has a big beard.
There we go.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
are some good ones, right? For young men, it's getting muscular, right? Getting
Sure.
ripped, getting jacked.
Yeah.
All the terms that getting thick, whatever. There's
Right.
all these different terms that they use over the decades. A lot of it comes back to relationships with women, right? And a real man can attract any woman or gets a lot of women. These are the cultural stereotypes that these young men are faced with, and they're bombarded with images and media and songs about this kind of stuff, and they're getting really twisted views of what it means to be a man. And the views that they're getting are like guiding their behavior and their thoughts, right? And so that's why you see a lot of guys just making poor choices and just jumping into things that they think are part of manliness and growing up and maturing,
Sure.
but are going to lead them to regret and missed opportunities and all kinds of stuff. And so one of the things over the years that I've been passionate about just through discipleship of young men in our ministries is just helping them see what it means to be a godly man. Because if you can become a godly young man, then you're going to be a godly leader. You're going to be a godly husband and father in the future, a godly employee or worker, even in the drive-through, But all of these things feed into our future and the impact that we're going to make. And ultimately, manhood shapes our culture, shapes the fabric of our society. And so if we can help young people develop a good perspective of what it means to be a godly man, it's going to pay off in numerous ways in the future. And so, that's something that I've always been passionate about, helping young men. And then recently, I don't know if you've heard some of this research about men's involvement in church lately, but there's been a flip in recent years, according to, this is kind of a Barna study that's recently come out. There's a bunch of studies out there, but there's been a definite increase in men's involvement in church over the last few years.
Okay.
They've actually outpaced women for one of the first times in recent memory. And so
There's more men coming to church than women.
there's more men, and they're going more regularly than women.
Okay.
As well.
Do we know why this is happening?
There's different factors that are in that these experts, these surveyors will throw out there. But one of the things is just a hunger, a spiritual hunger. And it's been interesting to me because I didn't know about this research until maybe a couple of months ago when I was realizing the overwhelming majority of all of my ministry contexts that I get to lead and be a part of, overwhelmingly male involvement in these things.
Yeah.
Youth group on a Wednesday night,
Sure.
we'd see maybe 70% guys showing up. And in our campus ministries that we do at the high school and the middle school, one of the high school ministries that we're sponsoring is literally 95% guys.
Interesting.
And the middle school is 80% guys. And this is interesting because most of the time you'd think of, especially in teenage years, girls mature faster. They become more spiritually interested. I've always seen that. Like in years past, looking for student leaders in the youth ministry, I would look to the girls because they're just more solid at that age. They think clearer. They're more mature. The guys, they're a work in progress, and you get that. But over the last couple of years, I've seen the guys really being more ready for leadership and thinking more maturely than I have in past years.
Right.
So I was like, man, what's going on here, right? Is this unique to my context? And that's when I started seeing some church trends and some of these surveys and some of this research that's backing up the fact that men, and especially young men, Gen Z in particular being involved in church at a much higher rate than past years.
Interesting. Yeah, because in my limited lifetime experience, I've been in many churches in different places around the world, and sometimes you walk into a church and it's 90% women. And my thought in that has always been that coming to the Lord requires a certain level of admitting that you're weak.
Yeah.
And so it's easier for a woman to admit that she's weak. And obviously this is a broad generalization, but for a guy, he's like, well, I got to figure it out on my own. But what you're talking about is spiritual curiosity.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I find to be super interesting, and I don't have exact statistics on this, but when I came to this radio station, I was expecting most of the listeners to be older women. And I would contend that it's mostly, or I shouldn't say mostly, because that sounds like it's like 80% men. That's not true. But I would say it's more than half men. And the average age is probably mid-40s.
Okay.
It's younger than I thought.
Yeah.
And it's more men than I thought. But you're talking about this is starting with Gen Z, which is much, much younger. They're curious about spiritual things, and they're making the effort not just to, I guess I should say, make an internet search on it, but they're showing up at church.
They are. And I'm seeing that even in the last couple of months after I've read this research and kind of seeing, hey, maybe this is part of like this trend. You know, El Paso's generally behind a lot of trends compared to other places in the nation. Maybe we're ahead of it a little bit, or at least in my ministry context, because we're seeing so many guys. And I always joke with them is that they're scaring all the girls away, right? Take a shower, dude. Like, but it's more than that. I think there is just this genuine interest and hunger to know their purpose and to be challenged and guided into something that matters.
Sure.
And I think that with Gen Z especially, millennials are included in actually, we're seeing a lot of research that's showing millennials returning to church.
Okay.
Because I think that was one of the generations that really started to see a drift. The millennials were the ones where, if you're familiar with deconstruction and and a lot of those conversations, those were mainly millennials.
Okay.
And we're seeing many of those return to church.
Interesting.
But it's Gen Z that's showing the highest involvement, male involvement in Christian, specifically Christian church involvment, as far back as we can remember with different generations.
Okay.
So it's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. I think I might have asked you a similar question in our previous conversation when you were on this program, but I want to be careful to ask you again now before I forget.
Yeah.
I'm hearing this all over the borderland from different churches. There's people coming to church this Sunday, last Sunday, more and more, and we don't know why. And the why is maybe less important than what to do when they show up.
Sure.
And I would say, particularly if you have a smaller church and particularly older people, could you give me just one or two? It doesn't have to be the most important tips, but maybe just one or two tips when you see some younger people walking in on Sunday, looking around, and you know that they're new.
Well, the first thing is you've got to be friendly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to make sure that they feel like they've got a place there. So welcoming them, making an effort to get to know them and invite them into that space instead of just like a quick hi. Sometimes in church, we think that we're a welcoming or friendly church because we had a greeter at the door.
Yeah.
And it's got to be more than that, because that's the other thing is I think part of what's driving this push towards church is this longing for community and connection that's really been hit and miss over the last 5-ish years, ever since 2020, right? When we lost a lot of connections, that's been something that we're seeing a hunger for. And so it's got to be more than just, oh, hi, welcome here. Yeah. It's got to be a genuine connection with people, welcoming them in, inviting them to lunch kind of thing. So my tip is if you see young people come into your church building, offer to sit with them and offer to take them to lunch after church, because everyone goes to lunch, but what a great opportunity to just really show them, hey, Like, we're here for you. And if you're going to come to this church, this is what we're about, and we're going to get your back. So,
yeah. And I love what you're saying. First of all, it's great when churches have greeters, but it almost appears that they're hired help.
Sure. Yeah.
Which, you know, they're doing their jobs. It's very important, but make sure it looks real is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Make sure it's genuine.
And you know, we get naturally distracted from that because we get comfortable, and we know the people that we want to say hi to. We want to catch up with them because we haven't seen them since last Sunday. But it takes that shift of saying, man, we really need to welcome these people in.
Yeah.
And, that's a young person. We need young people here.
Right.
And I've heard this stuff about young people being hungry for community and hungry for the gospel. Like, how can we welcome them?
Yeah,
in?
and I love the idea of inviting them for lunch. I'm going to tag on my own idea about lunchtime.
Yeah.
Ask them questions. Don't just tell them about yourself.
Very true.
That's one thing I need to remind myself sometimes in different conversations. We all do probably. But ask them about them.
Yeah.
Don't just tell them about your most recent medical diagnosis or whatever that would be.
Right.
But hear from them. And I think you'll be amazed at how interested young people are or excited about having lunch with an older person.
Yeah. And, you know, there is that interest. I think there is genuinely an interest in the intergenerational influence. We don't know what these young people are coming from.
Sure.
They may have never had a father figure in their life. They may never have had a solid family environment.
Right.
Well, the scriptures give us a clear example that the church can be those things, right? We can be those things for each other. We can be spiritual mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, the body of Christ, the family of God. All these kind of things that we see in scripture can become very real when we take an interest in people and make a decision to invest in them.
Love it. If you're just joining us with Pastor Jeremy Kroeker, he's the student ministries pastor at First Baptist here in El Paso. We're talking about, I guess we could call it a phenomenon of young men coming to church and getting excited about things of the Lord.
Yeah.
And we're going to dive deeper into that conversation. But first, we do need to take a break. And this is your daily reminder that 915 Talk is a production of Desert Voice Media. The website is desertvoice.media. And I would ask everyone today, when you get home, not right now when you're driving, but when you get home, pull up YouTube and subscribe to 915 Talk on YouTube, because of course we're here on the radio. That's where most people listen to us. But we also make it possible for you to watch the radio through the YouTube, through Facebook. And it's a huge help for us when you like, subscribe, and have a little bit of interaction there on the internet. So would you please help us out? Go to YouTube, find 915 Talk, that's a channel, and hit subscribe. Maybe even watch a few of the old videos or this one with Pastor Jeremy. We're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Breaking worldwide news. You can now feed your mind, feed your soul with great Christian teaching and talk on Alexa. That's right. All you have to say is, "Hey Alexa, play KELP radio," and boom! Instant Christian teaching, talk, and truth 24/7.
Greetings, KELP listeners. My name is Terry Gray, and I have the joy and privilege of serving as the pastor of Calvary Chapel Sun City, located on the west side of El Paso. I also have the joy of connecting with the radio audience in the borderland through the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on this station. On Summons, we study the Bible book by book, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, precept by precept. Please join us each weekday at 5 p.m. for Summons right here on KELP.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. This is 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we're with Pastor Jeremy Kroeker. He's the student ministries pastor at First Baptist here in El Paso. We're talking about young men in the church. What is biblical manhood? Before we went into the break, we were talking about just how young people are coming to church, but particularly young men. Mm-hmm. And tell us more.
Yeah. So again, I'm gonna say that in my ministry context for the last couple of years, I've just seen a majority of young men being involved, way outnumbering the young women that are being involved. And so, like, my question was, what do I do with this, Lord? Like, obviously, like, we want to equip people. That's the point of ministry, is equipping
Right.
all of the saints.
Sure.
But you've specifically been bringing us these young men. And again, in today's culture, most of them have come from broken families, divorced households, single parent households.
Yeah.
So how do we fill in some of those gaps, and how do we help them develop and mature? So a couple of years ago, we started doing a regular series through our youth ministry, teaching rotations on what does being a godly man look like. And we regularly cover issues like relationships and identity. That's part of a youth ministry or a college ministry's recurring topics, if you will. Very important things to hit on regularly. And so we started doing these. Hey, what does it mean to be a godly man? Becoming a godly man. This is how men act. This is how men speak. This is how men treat others. And we just saw the fruit of that, right? We saw these young men eating that up and really grasping some of those disciplines, some of those just ways to train yourself to act more mature and act manly and become an influence and become a leader. And so we started seeing the benefits of that. These young men who, again, in the past where student leadership teams would be majority girls because they mature faster. Then all of a sudden we've got these young men who are ready to lead and ready to be an influence on others. Now, it doesn't mean they're perfect. They're still, smell weird and, do dumb things like we all do, right? But there's definitely this increase in responsibility and readiness to serve and to be ministers, to be leaders.
I love that. And let's talk a little bit about disciplines. What are some of the disciplines that you hope to see both young men and young women probably exhibit or exemplify as they grow in Christ?
Well, here's the thing, Andy. So there's a lot of great books out there that help people understand what it means to develop a godly character. Is specifically about manhood. There's a great book that was very influential to me called Disciplines of a Godly Man, and they made a young man's version of that. I believe Kent Hughes is the author of that book. So these books have like 12 to 15 chapters, and it's like it can feel overwhelming. You know, when you look at it, it's like, what? Yeah. To be a disciplined, godly young man, I've got to do 15 things?
Yeah.
Or like even, Timothy and Titus, classic passages about godly men and leaders.
Right.
There's like 10 or 12 items listed there. And it's like, man, I'm a terrible man. Like, I got so much work to do, right?
Right.
And so I think that's something that struck me, is like most people are going to be overwhelmed by this is what you've got to do to become a godly man, or this is the disciplines of a godly life. And so I started figuring out how to make it more digestible, more accessible to especially like a 15-year-old,
right?
Who's like, man, yeah, I want to be a godly young man. What does that look like?
Right.
So I try to base it as basic as possible, as broad as possible,
right?
And so I kind of came up with 3 main categories or 3 statements that all reflect back to Jesus,
right?
And so I say that becoming a godly young man, you've got to love like Jesus. You've got to serve like Jesus, and you have to sacrifice like Jesus. And those break down into subcategories, if you will. But if you really look at it, that's what real men, that's what godly men do, is they love like Jesus. And I love thinking back to like what Jesus would have been like in the flesh, and we all know that, he was a carpenter, and I just wonder about what kind of stuff he built.
Right.
It's probably pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Right? I love working with wood, and I love making projects and stuff like that. But I could just imagine like how awesome, how skilled he was, but just more so the way he treated people. And so when we talk about becoming a godly man, we got to love like Jesus, and Jesus himself in the Great Commandment said that we've got to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, all our strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So real men love like Jesus. We love God, which means that we put him first in everything that we do. And so for a young man, for a 15-year-old, that means, hey, when you wake up in the morning, instead of going straight to check your Instagram or your social media stuff, instead of going straight to play whatever game you're addicted to right now on your screen, go to the Word, or go to prayer. Like, love the Lord your God and love like Jesus did. And very early in the morning, the scriptures say Jesus got up, withdrew, and prayed. Yeah. Right? So when we love like Jesus, it starts with that connection and that love for God. And that should guide like everything that we do, right? Right. But then the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. So real men love like Jesus. That means that we don't fall into just some of the traps that culture says real men. Oh, you're aggressive. You're not going to submit to anybody, and anyone stands up to you, you put them in their place. And the way we treat women, and you notice I'm using my manly voice, right? Yeah. But like all of these things is like we've got to see that man, to be a godly young man, I've got to love like Jesus. Sure. And so I go to God first, and I put him as a priority for everything, and then the way I treat others should be shaped by my love for God. So the kind of friendships that I develop come out of my love for Jesus. The way I think about and view and treat women comes out of my love for Jesus. Yeah. Not from culture, because that'll mess you up, man. Yeah. But if I love like Jesus, then that's going to transform the way that I treat the people around me. That's going to help me become a godly leader, a good friend, and somebody worth dating or marrying, and all of that kind of stuff, right? And so love like Jesus, and that shapes your priorities, and that shapes your relationship to others. The second thing is to serve like Jesus. And so when we talk about serving, I think practically this comes back to how a young man approaches disciplines like work and effort, right? Like a young man is probably really excited to some extent to develop their skills. If they're into sports or music or whatever, they're going to put in that time. They're going to give effort to that. But how do we extend that to things that we don't enjoy so much, like schoolwork, like getting a job, right? Like these are the kind of things that if we're
paying bills,
exactly, man. Like how can we serve like Jesus? Well, then we approach work and responsibilities as a way to honor God, as a way to set an example, as a way to be an outflow or an influence because of our attitude towards those things and because of the effort that we put towards those things. So if we're willing to serve like Jesus, we're going to do better with the responsibilities that get placed in our life. We're going to look for ways to serve in church, and we're going to look for those responsibilities of leadership and training that help us get more experience. And then all of that factors into our witness, right? So if we're serving like Jesus, it's going to make a difference. Jesus said, let your light shine before men so that people may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. And so like our actions back up our faith, and people start noticing, hey, man, this 16-year-old, he's a little different than the other 16-year-olds that I've encountered, or man, this 17-year-old young man, he's mature, he's giving effort, he's setting an example. Like that becomes part of our witness. And so instead of hammering like, okay, guys, here's 10 characteristics and you better be this, and that. No, love like Jesus and serve like Jesus. Yeah. Those are going to be such a transformative characteristics in your life, and they're going to make a difference on your relationships and your effort and your responsibilities and your witness towards others. It's going to be a living example of your faith to other people.
Yeah, I love the idea of the guys need it simplified. I think, like you said, if you had someone a manual on being a man, it could be, it's daunting, it's overwhelming, I can't do that. But really helping them to focus on Christ and just emulating what they see in his life.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Then my third one was sacrifice like Jesus. And this is where it gets a little bit more specific into the things that we do in our life, or more importantly, the things that we don't do. And so when we learn to sacrifice like Jesus, obviously he was the ultimate sacrifice. So please, like, I understand, like, we cannot sacrifice like Jesus.
Sure.
But we see the idea in Scripture, like in 1 John, it says to lay down your life for your brother, like to live and live your life for your brother, like set that example of sacrifice by the way that you treat others, the way that you serve others. But when we talk about sacrificing like Jesus, that word sacrifice is literally giving something up. And to be a real godly young man, there are certain things that you have to be willing to give up to get there. Right. And part of that comes back to discipline is if you really want to get to know the Lord, if you really want him to empower and fuel your life, then you have to discipline yourself to set some time aside in your day to focus on him. Right.
Sure.
There's so many tools out there, man. The Bible app, the YouVersion Bible app is such a great resource to just literally put scriptures in the palm of your hand, reminders for your reading plans, resources at your fingertips. It's such a great thing, but you have to discipline yourself and sacrifice some time to get into the Word, to get to know and develop that love and that heart for the Lord. Some other things that a young man needs to be ready to sacrifice is, giving up on some of the things that their peers are going to be pushing them towards and what culture is pushing them towards, especially in the area of our view and our treatment of women, the consumption of media, right? Just different things that are considered cool, like substance abuse or going to parties and drinking and getting together with girls. Like, those are things that a godly man is going to need to sacrifice,
Right.
To be in line with what God's guidelines are, but also to set that example and saying, hey, that's not what I'm going to be about. I'm going to sacrifice some of those things, even though everyone around me is doing them. I'm willing to sacrifice those things because I want to be a godly young man. And then some of the other things is like sacrifice the way that you speak, right? Because it can be very common for young men, especially to adopt certain phrases and words that seem cool and seem edgy, but really don't advance your witness.
Sure.
And they kind of show your immaturity. And that is extending longer and longer. And the people my age are still talking like they did back when they were 15. I'm like, come on, guys, we got to grow up, right? Like it's not cool to cuss all the time. Like,
Right.
you sound like a...
Isn't it interesting? That's
Anyway.
one of the simplest ways for people to know there's something different about you.
Exactly. Yeah. And it can be hard. And that's why I say that that's a sacrifice, because again, you're surrounded by it all the time. Are you willing to sacrifice and be different? But real men and becoming a godly young man requires sacrifice. You got to be willing to give certain things up. You got to be willing to do certain things differently for the sake of your growth, your maturity, and your influence.
Right.
So love like Jesus, serve like Jesus, and sacrifice like Jesus. Those are the three things that I think characterize a godly man. And those are things that encompass and include all sorts of different aspects of our life. And if we can just remind ourselves, again, the simple version of those three categories, I think it can really drive us.
Right. And I just want to point out one part, just a big part of public discourse can be what is the best way to honor a woman, respect a woman? There's so many varying viewpoints on that, but I think it would be difficult, or I'll say this, it would be impossible to find a better example of a way to respect and honor women than to live like Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's flies in the face of so much what is said in modern culture. But I love that, and you're really working to instill that in the lives and minds of these young men. In the youth group.
Last time I was on air, I brought one of our young men from our youth ministry, one of our student leaders who has gone through that Godly Young Man series multiple times and has really grown and matured a lot. But some of the things that he was talking about in relation to temptation that young people are facing, I got a text while we were on air from a friend of mine who's working with young adults at another church here in town, and he said, "Man, I couldn't believe." Aiden's the young man that was on air with us, and
Right.
he had mentioned about pornography and the temptation for that being in the palm of your hands on these devices. And my friend texts, he says, working with young adults, I couldn't believe that it's every single one of them dealing with pornography addictions and issues related to purity. Right. That's the bigger category that we would use in church to talk about these things. Right.
Yeah.
And he was like, every single one. And it's like, exactly. Those are the things that we need to challenge these young men is if you're involved in that, we understand it's easy to get caught up in that. We understand the temptation and the access to that is different from our generation, but you can come out of that. And you can have victory over that. Yeah. And we need to call them to a higher standard, and we need to push them and challenge them to be more disciplined in those areas, to be more surrendered in those areas, and to fight hard to overcome negative habits, whether it be pornography or the way they speak or the way they're approaching dating and relationships with women. We've got to call them and encourage them and push them to a higher standard. Right. And I think they'll respond to that. They'll respond to that.
Absolutely, and that whole area is of purity, and more specifically pornography, is such a awkward, difficult conversation. But you make a very simple, important point. All the young men are at least dealing with temptation in that area. They're going through things that I'll say this as an older guy, that we didn't have to go through because there wasn't that access when we were younger, and to just pretend that this does not exist is not helpful. Right. And at least start off by praying for the young men in your church. Start off somewhere, because the level of temptation they have to deal with is way beyond anything I believe we ever had to.
And that's where we lead by example as well, Andy. We've got to set that standard. And I don't know what the current statistic is. I remember a couple of years ago, I read a statistic that even among pastors and church leaders, that like 70% were still dealing with viewing pornography in some format. Yeah. And I remember sharing that and saying, boldly but humbly, I am not one of those.
Right.
That is something that I have not given into in my life. And so if you need someone to fight with you, I'm there for you, man.
Sure.
You can do this.
Right.
And I think that that's something that we need to take seriously is as a man in leadership, how can I set that example? Right. And how can I exemplify being a godly man? And again, I think they respond to that, and men like the challenge. They might not like it, but they grasp it.
Sure. And wow, so much more to dive into. If you're just joining us with Pastor Jeremy Kroeker, he's the student ministries pastor over at First Baptist El Paso. We do need to take a break. Before we go into the break, this is the part of the program where KELP Radio thanks its impact partners. These are local businesses, churches, nonprofits, educational institutions that have joined us in our journey to serve our community through radio ministry. The impact partner I want to point out today is Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate. Patrick Tuttle of Coldwell Banker Heritage has been on this program a couple times. And so if you're looking to buy or sell a house, you can reach out to Coldwell Banker. Their link is right there on KELPradio.com in the impact partner section. Also, they are having a seminar in April, and you can look for ahouseforeverychild.com, ahouseforeverychild.com, how one investment property can pay for college, weddings, or a head start in life. And one of the things I like is what this seminar is not. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not a flipping strategy, and it's not high pressure. The number is 915-585-7777, 915-585-7777. It's going to be on a Saturday morning. Oh, sorry, it's not in April. It's March 28th, Saturday, March 28th. And it'll be at the Hilton Garden Inn out by the El Paso airport. My wife and I plan to go. We want to go and learn. We don't know if this is a good fit for our goals, but I enjoy Patrick. I enjoy what he's offering, and let's continue to learn together. Thank you to Coldwell Banker for being an impact partner. We're going to go into a break. Do not touch that dial.
We'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
Greetings, KELP listeners. This is Terry Gray, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Sun City, and speaker on the Summons broadcast heard each weekday at 5 p.m. right here on this station. Calvary Chapel, Sun City is located at 960 West Borderland Road on the west side of El Paso. We hold services on Wednesday evenings at 7 and on Sunday mornings at 9 and 11. If you are without a church home, we would love to have you join us for worship and Bible study. You can find out more information about us on the web at www.ccsuncity.org.
This is Pastor Steve Castrita. I'd like to extend the invitation for you to join us in service every Saturday at 5 p.m. at Redeeming Grace Church, El Paso. We are located at 2400 George Dieter inside Iglesia Philadelphia. We're a young church on the east side of El Paso with no smoke, no lasers, and no gimmicks, just the uncompromising Word of God and a call to win the 915 for Jesus Christ. We'd love to meet you and your family. God bless you, and thank you for listening to KELP.
We're back. You're listening to 915 Talk.
And we're back. You are listening to 915 Talk. I'm your host, Andy Frecka. Today we're with Pastor Jeremy Kroeker. He's the student ministries pastor over at El Paso First Baptist, or First Baptist of El Paso. And we're talking about raising godly young men. We're talking about this phenomenon of young men really coming into church, really wanting to take on leadership positions. And one of the things is really wanting to learn discipline. And you mentioned the last time you came in, to this program, you came with one of your student leaders, Aiden Maldonado. And I remember what Aiden said. He came to church because he was, this is funny, he was actually interested in Islam.
Right.
And I've heard about this in years past, young men being attracted to Islam just because there's structure, there's community, there's requirements being placed upon them. It's not all just, I'm going to make a flippant term, but it's not all just like free grace,
Right.
Which is what we often think would be attractive to a young man. But really they're looking to be challenged. What are you seeing?
So it was interesting because, especially among college students or young adults, I was seeing these guys take a real interest in either Roman Catholicism or Orthodox Christianity.
Okay.
And again, not just one or two. These were conversations. I was like, man, there seems to be a trend or something going on where there's a heightened awareness of those things and a heightened interest of those things. And I started asking, like, why? Why is that a draw? Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with those, but it was just different because I hadn't seen an interest in that, especially from young men in the past. And if you think about how, like, within the Christian church over the last several decades, there's been definitely that push towards modernity and like being a little more modern or being a little more entertaining or engaging in the way we do services and the way we draw people, right? And that was, in a sense, to gain young people, to make it more relevant to young people, to engage them. Well, every few decades, we kind of go through cycles, right?
Sure.
And we see maybe kickback to the trends of the last couple of decades. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe that has something to do with that, as we've been so trying to be so relevant over the last few decades that the pendulum's swinging. And now there's these young people who are like, man, this is too fluffy, right? This is too light. You know, there's got to be something deeper in spirituality and in church. And so I think that what we're seeing, I'm going to read this statement that I was reading the other day. It says, many young people today feel disoriented by fast changing social norms, digital life, and secular culture that often feels purposeless or chaotic. So you realize, man, they're balancing a bunch of things, right? And they're on a device and they're listening to music and they're doing this, they're multitasking and they're able, like their life is fast paced. Young people are fast paced. Their minds are constantly at work. And so then this article that I was reading says traditional Christianity's long history, well-defined doctrines, and structured practices can feel grounding compared to what young people see as a fractured cultural landscape. So there's seems to be this draw to the tradition and structure of Roman Catholicism and Orthodox Christianity. You know, there's a lot of liturgy, rituals. The theology has deep historic roots, right? And for some young seekers, that feels real or more serious and meaningful. Right. Compared to maybe your typical Baptist church. Right, or whatever, right?
Yeah, I find that so interesting. And I want to be careful to say this because, you know, every church has something we can learn from.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's so easy, I think, for maybe someone's listening right now and they're saying, well, I'm a Baptist, I'm a Pentecostal, I'm essentially what they're saying is I'm not Catholic, I'm not Orthodox. Right. And we're not here to suggest that anyone should become those things, but there's something to learn.
Yeah.
So given that you are a Baptist youth pastor and given that young men are drawn to this sense of structure, maybe the historical context, how do you respond in the Baptist church?
Well, here's the interesting thing is, again, we can be so consumer driven.
Wait, hold on. Don't tell me relay races at youth group.
Absolutely. Pizza and relay races, man. And then a fog machine on stage during music. That's the solution. No, but I think one of the things that I've seen is, again, what are we challenging them to? What kind of structure or meaningful spiritual life are we pushing them towards? And so I think it's less about, you know, in my context, I've seen it less about liturgy or rituals, because we all have our own forms of liturgy or rituals, and the way you present certain things, I think, matters. In other words, you can grow up in church and just take Lord's table for granted, right?
Sure.
But we need to make sure as leaders that, and even as parents, right, train our kids up in these things is like, hey, like this is very meaningful. This is a deep tradition. This is one of the things that Jesus told us to do regularly, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of it's the way we present certain things is we can become so casual about it, that we lose its meaning. We lose the history and the meaning.
Lose a sense of reverence.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that some of it comes back to how we present what we do, because we all have liturgy. We all do certain things in our churches, right? It's just how are we
Every
presenting
church is liturgical.
Exactly. And so I think what I've seen is, again, the importance of explaining why we do certain things, including like, why do we sing? Why is Christian karaoke such a thing, like in churches? Like that's what I heard one student refer to it as. He wasn't used to church. He came, he was like, why does everyone do Christian karaoke? Like whenever you guys meet together.
Yeah, it is interesting. We have these traditions that we don't even think about. And someone coming in and just have their mind blown.
And so we explained, hey, we're going to set aside some time tonight to express worship to God through music. We see this as an expressive form, a way of expressing emotions and truth through music. We see music as a big part of the scriptures. We explain why we do it. I think that's important. Because that shows, again, like, hey, we're not just doing random stuff. There's deep meaning behind this, right? And there is history behind this.
Sure.
This is deeply rooted in church and in Christianity. So I think explaining why we do certain things is a big part of it. But again, challenging them to something more than just showing up to church.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. And that's where like some of that structure or push towards maturity and growth and responsibility, especially young men, can grasp onto that. Hey, it's not just about sitting here and listening to another lecture.
Right.
I just sat through school for 8 hours today and I had a short break, and now I come and have to sit through another lecture in this youth ministry meeting or whatever. And it's like, no, we have a job for you. We're going to put you and your faith into action. And whether that be some kind of a serving role within your youth ministry, within your church, or going out into the community, some of the things that we try to do regularly with our youth ministry is engage them in hands-on activities as part of our youth night. Like, you know, hey, tonight we're going out and we're giving out free water bottles to people and asking if they need prayer. Or, hey, tonight, guys, we're going to go and serve Mrs. So-and-so. She's a widow. Her yard is overgrown with weeds, and we're just going to go knock that out together in an hour. You know, and giving them like jobs. You know, getting into action and showing that faith and church is more than just sitting, singing a song and listening to a lecture. Like, it's living, it's active, and we need to be providing, especially young men, with those opportunities, or they get bored.
And I think that, absolutely. I think this is such an important conversation because I'm sure at First Baptist Youth you have pizza sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm sure you play games, all of those things, but those are not the primary things that are attracting young people or getting them to stick around. Well, maybe the pizza is.
You know, food is great, man, for young people, especially. If you can provide food of any kind at your ministry meetings for young people, just do it. It's worth it. You know, it shows hospitality. It gives them a treat. It's also a good icebreaker. It's like, hey, welcome in. Grab some pizza, you know? Hey, we've got snacks over here, right? It's an easy way to make people feel welcome. But it's got to be more than that.
Yeah, and you bring up the point of just really providing service opportunities. I remember growing up in youth group, it felt like if we didn't have service opportunities that we were only eating and never exercising. And as young people, you have to get out there, you have to do something. And I think part of this conversation would be also to kind of take the pressure off some churches that might have some young people and the leaders of the church are trying to be cool. It's like those young people, really what they're looking for is community. They're looking for some serious conversations. They're looking for meaning. And regardless of how out of date your clothes style or your understanding of modern culture might be, if you're grounded in the Word, you have those things.
And case in point, just the other day I was meeting with a young man from our college ministry, and we were talking about discipleship. And hey, this is how we view discipleship. We match you with somebody who's going to be like a mentor to you. You're going to meet with them regularly. Kind of laid out kind of our view of what discipleship looks like through our college ministry. I was like, do you have anyone in mind I was thinking from within our leadership team for the college ministry, do you have anyone in mind that you would like to meet with regularly? And he threw out a name of another gentleman from our church who's much older and who I didn't even know he had any interactions with. And he was like, man, if that guy could mentor me, that would be awesome. And I was like, whoa, cool. Yeah, let me make that phone call, right? And I called that gentleman, and he was thrilled. And he was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know he knew me.
I love that. The younger man thought that this older brother in Christ was unattainable. And the older brother thought the same thing.
Exactly. So it was a great match, and they were both excited, and we launched them, and they're going to be meeting regularly, and he's going to be investing in this young man. And I think that's a great thing. And so I think I want to come back to real quick, Andy, have you ever heard the term ortho bros?
Ortho bros. I assume it has nothing to do with orthodontics.
No. So again, going back to the draw of maybe Orthodox Christianity, there's several podcasts and things that are out there that are these leaders from Orthodox faith. And this is a cultural term. It's not their own branding, but they've been lumped into this term called the ortho bros. And it's kind of this idea of these more deeper, meaningful spiritual leaders calling people, specifically young men, into a deeper, more meaningful faith through the traditions of the Orthodox Church or Roman Catholicism or some of these long traditional denominations or churches, whatever we want to call them, right? And so I was talking to one young man about the Ortho Bros. He was like, "Hey, man, you kind of remind me of the Ortho Bros." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well," I was like, "Because I got a beard or what?" You know? And he's like, "No, it's just like they're calling people to a more masculine faith." And there's this appeal to that. And I'm thinking, what are we not calling people to a masculine faith? Like, I mean, I know faith is for everybody.
Sure.
But like, what does that mean? And I think it comes back down to young men want an example, and they want to be challenged, and they want to be led, and they want to be pushed towards something. And going back to my thoughts from earlier is, if we can invite them into a faith that challenges them to love like Jesus, to serve like Jesus, and to sacrifice like Jesus, that's a masculine faith.
Yeah.
That's something that helps you develop into a real man, and it invites you into an adventure and a challenge and a journey of faith that, you're going to find so much purpose and fulfillment in, and you're going to see the fruits of it. Even as hard as it is to love, serve, and sacrifice like Jesus, you're going to see the fruit of it by your own growth and maturity, but also the influence that you're going to have on other people.
Love it. I feel like we could talk about this for another hour or two, but our time has tragically run short. Such an important conversation, talking about masculinity in the church, and especially the young men in the church, and how we're challenging them. And that's what they're looking for. Jeremy, so appreciate you coming in today.
Appreciate you having me on. Look forward to another time.
Absolutely. As we always say, let's learn to love our city, love our neighbors, and give God all the glory. This has been 915 Talk. You have been listening to 915 Talk, a production of Desert Voice Media. To listen to this or any previous edition of 915 Talk, just visit